Moving on now to Tanzania. The country has cancelled its Independence Day celebrations, and the decision comes amid calls for protests over deadly election violence last month.
December 9th, 2025, a date that should have been filled with joy in Tanzania, a day meant to celebrate independence, freedom, unity. But this year, something changed. Instead of fireworks, the government delivered a message no one expected. There will be no Independence Day celebrations. The reason? The nation is still shaking from the chaos that erupted after the recent election. Streets turned into battlegrounds, buildings were destroyed, public roads were damaged, and most painful of all, lives were lost. For thousands of families, the wounds are still open. And so, the government says the money meant for celebrations will now be used to rebuild what was broken. But canceling a national holiday is never just a budget decision. It is a signal, a warning, a sign that the image of a peaceful Tanzania has cracked in a way the world cannot ignore. So the real question becomes this: is this a moment of healing, or the first sign that something far more dangerous is coming? Let's find out. Tanzania has always been known as one of the calmest nations in East Africa, a country where political storms rarely shake the streets. But the recent election changed everything. The moment the results were announced, the calm cracked. Protests erupted across several regions, fast, loud, and angry. Many citizens felt the election was unfair. They believed the process was hidden behind closed doors, that something wasn't right. Opposition groups went further. They accused the government of manipulating the results, of choosing power over democracy. And then, like so many times in African politics, the protests turned violent. Shops were smashed, cars were set on fire, government buildings were damaged, whole neighborhoods felt the shockwaves. Some roads became too dangerous to use. Clashes between protesters and security forces spread through the night, and in the chaos, people were injured, and some never made it home. The peaceful image of Tanzania was fading, and a new, darker reality was beginning to appear. For a country that rarely sees unrest, what happened in Tanzania was shocking. The protests may have stopped, and the streets may look calm again, but the government's latest decision exposed just how deep the crisis truly was. Independence Day is only days away. Normally, it is a celebration of music, marches, and national pride, a day where the entire country comes together. But not this year. With buildings burned, roads damaged, and families still grieving, the government decided that celebrating would send the wrong message. President Samia Suluhu Hassan announced that all Independence Day events are canceled. Every shilling meant for festivities would now be redirected to rebuilding what the unrest destroyed. It was a decision that shocked many, and at the same time, it quietly revealed the truth. Tanzania is facing one of its toughest political moments in years. For the government, this wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a strategic choice. Yes, Tanzania has experienced unrest before, but this time, it was different. The scale, the anger, the destruction, it was on another level. Holding a national celebration in the middle of such tension, the government believed could push the situation from fragile to dangerous, and there are a few reasons why. The first reason was simple and practical. President Samia Suluhu Hassan argued that the money was needed elsewhere. Roads had been destroyed, schools and public centers were damaged, communities were still trying to recover. Tanzania is a developing nation, and every shilling matters. Choosing reconstruction over fireworks sent a clear message: stability comes before celebration. The second reason was about safety. Large public gatherings can be unpredictable, especially when emotions are still raw. Thousands of people in one place could easily attract anger, frustration, or even another protest. The last thing the government wanted was for Independence Day to become another night of clashes. And third, there was the international audience. For decades, Tanzania has been seen as one of Africa's most stable democracies, but the post-election chaos shook that image. Investors grew worried. Donor countries asked questions. Allies wanted to know what was happening. By canceling the national celebration and shifting focus to rebuilding, the government hoped to send a message to the world. We recognize the crisis, and we are trying to fix it. It was a move meant to calm outsiders and reassure them that Tanzania was still moving toward peace. But how did the people of Tanzania react to this announcement? So far, the response has been divided. Some citizens supported the decision. To them, the country needed healing, not celebration. They felt canceling Independence Day was a sign of respect for those who were injured or lost their lives in the unrest. It showed responsibility and empathy, but others saw it differently. For many Tanzanians, Independence Day is more than a holiday. It is a moment of unity, a day of pride, a reminder of how far the nation has come. Losing that celebration felt like losing hope, especially at a time when the country needed it the most. Some critics even called the decision political. They argued that the government didn't want large crowds in the streets, not while the air was still tense, not while anger still simmered beneath the surface. To them, the cancellation was a way to avoid embarrassment and to prevent another wave of protests. Yet one thing is undeniable: the mood in Tanzania is heavy. The election did not just create tension, it exposed tension. Pressure that had been building quietly for years. Pressure many people refused to acknowledge. And for the first time in a long time, Tanzanians were confronted with a painful truth. Their democracy is not as unshakable as they once believed. A calm country has been forced to look in the mirror, and what it sees is a nation at a crossroads. You see, the protests did not appear out of thin air. They weren't sudden. They weren't random. They were the result of pressure that had been building quietly for years. On the outside, Tanzania looked like a calm, stable democracy with predictable elections. But beneath that calm surface, cracks had already formed. For years, people whispered about political freedom, about transparency, about how much space the opposition really had. And this recent election brought all those hidden fears into the light. Many citizens complained that the process wasn't open enough. They reported irregularities at polling stations, delays in vote counting, limited access for independent observers, things that made people question whether the result was truly fair. Opposition leaders went further. Some claimed they were intimidated, restricted, prevented from campaigning freely. And the painful truth is, these complaints were not new. During the later years of former President John Magufuli's rule, the opposition repeatedly reported harassment, arrests, and shrinking political space. Those years changed the political landscape, and not in a good way. Even after Magufuli's passing, many Tanzanians believe the country has not fully recovered. Some feel that the political system still carries the scars of that period. Scars that resurfaced violently during the recent election. The unrest was not just about one vote. It was a reaction to years of unresolved tension finally boiling over. So when this latest election arrived, it wasn't just another vote. It was a release valve. All the frustration that had been building for years finally exploded. That's why the protests spread so quickly, like a fire jumping from street to street. People were not only reacting to the final tally, they were reacting to years of feeling silenced, ignored, pushed aside. And the unrest didn't just come from the mainland. A deeper issue resurfaced: the long-standing tension between mainland Tanzania and Zanzibar. For decades, elections in Zanzibar have been surrounded by disputes and accusations. This year's chaos dragged those old wounds back into the spotlight. But there was something else too, something new. The violence exposed a clear generational divide. Young Tanzanians, especially the ones living on social media, are becoming more outspoken. They're demanding accountability, more freedom, more transparency, a political system that listens, not one that controls. Meanwhile, older generations see things differently. For them, stability is everything, even if it means avoiding political conflict, even if it means staying quiet. Two generations, two visions for the country. And for the first time in years, those visions collided in the open. Tanzania found itself at a crossroads, between the memories of its peaceful past and the demanding voice of its restless future. All of these forces, political tension, broken trust, generational pressure, and the Zanzibar divide, collided during the election. And when the results were finally announced, Tanzania reached a breaking point. For many citizens, watching their peaceful country slip into chaos was painful. It was a reminder that stability is not something a nation simply has. It is something that must be protected, defended, and sometimes rebuilt from the ground up. But this leads us to a bigger, more uncomfortable question. Is President Samia Suluhu Hassan fixing the crisis or losing control of it? When President Samia took power, She brought a completely different style compared to the late President John Magufuli. She spoke about openness, about dialogue, about creating a friendlier political environment. Many Tanzanians, and even the international community, welcomed that shift. It felt like a new chapter, but now, the election unrest has become her greatest test, a moment that will determine whether her leadership can truly hold the country together, or whether Tanzania is slipping into a deeper crisis under her watch. The nation is watching closely, and the world is paying attention. For some Tanzanians, President Samia's decision to cancel Independence Day looked like a calm, strategic move. It signaled that she wanted to cool down the political heat, to shift the nation's focus from conflict to healing. She even went on national platforms, calling for peace and unity. She urged citizens to think beyond politics, to put Tanzania first, to rebuild together. But not everyone saw it that way. To her critics, this moment is proof that she is losing control. They argue that her softer leadership style has created space for louder, more aggressive opposition voices, that she has not been firm enough, decisive enough, to contain rising political tension. Some believe her government reacted too slowly, that the protests were allowed to grow, spread, and harden before any real action was taken. By the time security forces intervened, the damage was already done. So now, the nation is split between two narratives. One sees her as a leader trying to calm the storm. The other sees her as a leader being swallowed by it. And in the middle of this divide stands a country searching for direction. Right now, a new question is rising across Tanzania. How much power does President Samia truly have? Some believe that the old political networks, those built during the previous administration, still hold influence behind the scenes. They say these hidden forces are slowing down her reforms, blocking her decisions, and quietly shaping the direction of the country. But her supporters argue the opposite. They say Samia inherited a political landscape already filled with landmines, a system damaged long before she became president. According to them, she stepped into leadership during one of the most sensitive moments in modern Tanzanian history, and she is doing the best she can with the situation she found. Still, her response to the crisis has been complicated. On one side, she calls for peace, reconciliation, and national dialogue. On the other, security forces were aggressive on the streets during the protests. This contradiction has confused many citizens. Some analysts believe it shows a government trying to walk a very thin line, maintaining order without completely violating basic rights. But one thing is certain, the government is struggling to find the right balance. And in the middle of this tension, one truth rises above everything else. This moment could define President Samia's legacy. If she manages to calm the political climate, restore trust, and guide Tanzania back to stability, she could emerge as one of the country's most unifying leaders. But if the unrest continues, if citizens lose confidence, her presidency could face even deeper challenges in the months to come. Hopefully, she will be able to steer the nation away from crisis. But there is something important we need to point out. While politicians argued and leaders made speeches, it was ordinary Tanzanians who suffered the most during the unrest. When the protests broke out, many people were caught in the middle. Shops in busy areas were looted or destroyed. Families who depended on these small businesses suddenly lost their only source of income. Some vendors said they had to watch helplessly as their goods were smashed, burned, or stolen. Transport was disrupted. Buses and taxis stopped working in certain parts of the city because roads were blocked or unsafe. Many people couldn't get to work, hospitals, or even buy basic items like food and water. Daily life came to a standstill. In some areas, schools were closed. Parents kept their children at home for safety. Students preparing for exams lost valuable study time. Teachers also struggled, with some unable to reach their workplaces. The healthcare sector also felt the impact. Hospitals reported a rise in injuries from clashes between protesters and security forces. Doctors and nurses had to work under pressure, treating wounds from stones, tear gas, or rubber bullets. Some victims faced long-term injuries that will affect their lives for years. For families who lost loved ones, the pain was even deeper. Funerals took place quietly, without much media coverage. Some parents lost children, and some children lost parents. These are scars that celebrations cannot erase. Even after the streets became calm again, fear remained. Many people said they were shocked because Tanzania has always been peaceful. Seeing violence in their neighborhoods changed how they view their country and their future. Till date, small business owners are still struggling to recover. Some are borrowing money to rebuild their shops. Others are thinking of moving to safer areas. Many fear that more unrest could bring everything crashing down again. The emotional impact is also strong. People feel uncertain. They worry about the next election. They wonder if this kind of violence could happen again. Perhaps this is why the government's decision to cancel Independence Day felt right for many citizens. Clearly, the country needs healing, not just roads and buildings, but hearts and communities. So, canceling Independence Day celebrations is not just a short-term fix. It sends a message about what matters now: healing, rebuilding, and caution. For one, it shows that the government recognizes how deep the unrest went. Instead of pretending everything is okay, Tanzania's leadership admitted the country needs time to recover. They put rebuilding ahead of fanfare. This is a sign of responsibility in difficult times. Hopefully, this decision might help to rebuild trust, as many Tanzanians felt embarrassed or angry when violence erupted. Canceling the celebrations can give space for communities to talk, heal, and rebuild without music, flags, or forced smiles hiding real pain. But all this also highlights underlying problems. When a country cannot celebrate its independence peacefully, it means something serious is broken. It shows that the next elections or political events must be handled with extreme care. With all that has happened, the Tanzania government should take certain things into cognizance to avoid a repeat.